Let's start. Hello, dear participants of our webinar. Today we have the first lecture of the planned new author lectures and discussions series on the subject Towards a Holistic Understanding of Zhong Yuan Qigong and Chinese Image Medicine in terms of philosophy, modern science, medicine and technology. Issues and contradictions, possible explanations, synthesis and innovations. Such a lecture cycle, and today we have the first lecture that is dedicated to introduction into this cycle. I'm trying to switch now. The first lecture, what is it about? Of course, our main interest is the system of Zhong Yuan Qigong and Chinese image medicine that are successfully represented by eminent Professor Serhiy Tong. Over the past 30 years, these ancient branches of psychophysical development, recovery and treatment of human have vigorously entered the life of our modern multinational community. But I like to emphasize that the main goal of this series of lectures is to work out and to generate a new, hopefully more holistic understanding from all aspects of these amazing systems, from the point of view not only of their traditional theory that we already know in parts thanks to lectures and workshops of Professor Serhiy Tong, but also from the point of view of semantic spaces of different branches of modern science, philosophy, medicine and technology. Such integrative approach, I hope, will provide a more extensive, versatile, holistic vision of the essence, goals and values of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine. The key point of the lectures and discussions is the term understanding, or rather holistic understanding. So to begin with, let's try to figure out what is understanding. What does it mean to understand something or someone? What is holistic understanding? First, let's consider the matter of the importance of understanding and mindfulness in personal practice of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine. Of course, the practice of these systems goes along with the emergence of new and very unusual, surprising sensations, tactile, visual, auditory, sometimes smell and gustatory, as well as images of perception and images of manifestation. These important aspects of our consciousness, soul, form the area of human sensibility through which a person directly contacts both with body and the entire outside world with its spatial and time attributes and other properties. This area is the basis of our personal experience and our daily practical activities. Also, the practice of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine allows us to work with the volitional sphere, that is, with our emotions, feelings, desires and acts of volitions, harmonizing, subtling and strengthening them. According to the traditional theory of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine, the main means that allow the practitioner to receive an unusual, to say more exactly extrasensory, are our tactile sensations, like the sensation of qi energy, visual sensations, the vision of qi energy and auditory sensations, hearing certain sounds, as well as images that are the result of the function of a person, of something named in Zhong Yuan Qigong and in image medicine, the third eye, or eye of the mind. Since these feelings and images in practice Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine play a significant role, having a strong influence on the person's mentality, significantly expanding, subtling, and deepening his inner phenomenal sensual world, we may very often to find among practitioners such a point of view that only personal sensations, the images we receive, emotions and feelings are the priority, only them which matter, but understanding, interpretation is a secondary aspect to matter to take into consideration. Examples confirming what is said above are those typical statements that things can be understood in different way. Understanding depends on the interpretation. Understanding is relative and not specific, abstract, idealized, taken away from real life. But doesn't it seem to you, dear listeners, that such an attitude to understanding, comprehending, is something very limited, lacks completeness and cognitive integrity? In fact, understanding is very important component of human mind, of person as he is. Also in the traditional theory of image medicine and Zhong Yuan Qigong, understanding is linked to the so-called phenomenon of second heart that particularly marks the understanding, comprehension of the image we perceive, sensation, emotion, feeling, volition. The work of the so-called second heart is connected with immediate intuitive understanding, insight, gaining new knowledge about the object of our research. It's very important that functions of the third eye and functions of the second heart are in harmonious connection, that images and sensations that we perceive are accompanied by their correct understanding, correct interpretation. Because without such deep, holistic understanding, wisdom is not possible as the main goal of practices of the fourth level of Zhong Yuan Qigong. On the one hand, while practicing Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine, we should develop our sensuality, deepening and refining our sensations, images, feelings, emotions, acts of will. But on the other hand, we must develop the level, depth, and integrity of our comprehension, of our understanding of these images and sensations. After all, it's the combination, the complementation or synthesis of sensuality and mindfulness, harmonized functioning of the third eye and second heart that open the path to wisdom, the way to enlightenment of the human mind. Consciousness. This process of generating wisdom is depicted on the figure that you can see. So, what is understanding? Understanding is a conscious penetration in the essence of a thing, of a situation or event. So, understanding gives access to the essence of things, and sensations and images are phenomena through which we perceive, through which we interact with things. At the deepest metaphysical, philosophical, even theological level, the purpose of understanding is to penetrate into the essence of being, into the essence of the world. In different cultures, we call it different way: reality, God, the universe, the absolute, Tao, void, para-Brahman. Understanding is entering the sphere of meanings and of ideas that always generalize a particular life experience, add interpretation to our sensations, images, emotions, and feelings. We could also say that understanding is penetration into the field of numbers of Pythagoras, in the world of ideas of Plato, in the alim of semantic structure of the vacuum, the field of big images, precisely thought images, semantic images of Zhong Yuan Qigong system and image medicine. Understanding something is an act of grasping the meaning, grasping the idea of the thing, of a state or situation we like to understand, to conceive. At the same time, it's well known that any act of understanding is a correlation between the meaning of the conceived thing and the entire personal semantic field of the person who conceives. That is, an understanding is performed only in the context of the entire body of knowledge of the person who understands, his entire personal semantic space, perception of the world. A good example to illustrate this global interaction of the entire semantic field of someone in any particular act of comprehension is the so-called bad infinity of definitions of any concept. In fact, it is well known in logic and semantics that in order to define any concept, an infinite number of other concepts and their definitions must be used. For example, when we want to define what a tree is, we'll say that a tree is a certain form of life related in biology to the group plants. But again, the question arises, what is plant? What is shape? What is life? Biology, and so on and so on. Understanding the meaning of the word tree is associated with the entire semantic space in which someone exists, from where it follows that if personal comprehension of something is being changed, then the whole personal semantic space is being changed. So learning is a continuous flow of changes of personal semantic space under the influence of the flow of particular life situations and cultural semantic contexts of the society where someone lives. A bright example of a radical change of the entire human semantic space when perception and comprehension of a particular thing is changed. It is known in Buddhism, especially in Chan, Zen Buddhism, phenomenon of instant enlightenment. For example, when practitioner Chan asks himself a very particular question or gets into a particular life situation, the answer to the question or the result to exit of this situation is the reconstruction of the whole semantic space, worldview, and attitude of the enlightened person. Personal semantic space of any of the individuals exists and develops itself under the influence of certain collective or intersubjective semantic space. Examples of such collective semantic spaces are the semantic worlds of different cultures, Orient or Western, semantic spaces of different religions. Here we need to understand that the semantic world in which a Christian lives differs from the semantic world where a Buddhist or atheist lives. Even though we live in the same physical world, the semantic worlds are very different. Besides all the religions, any philosophical system represents rationalized semantic space. Any science represents its proper semantic space, different philosophical trends. Any science carries its own semantic space. We can easily understand the differences between semantic fields, semantic spaces of different cultures and subcultures. So any semantic space represents a certain system of senses, system of meanings and relations between them. Here you can see a fragment of a graphic illustration of senses and relations between them, of what is a part of a semantic space. We are always in this part of volumetric semantic space. What is this system about? This system includes ontological, epistemological, structural, logical, axiological, and praxeological aspects. I'm going to clarify now all these components. First, ontological aspect is that semantics as field component that sets the worldview of an individual or a community and answers the questions: what is being, what is real, what is all consisted of, where did the world come from, etc. The epistemological aspect is that component of the semantic space that determines the possibilities of world cognition, cognition of the reality, as well as methods, nature, patterns of cognitive procedures, and answers the questions: what is cognition, how can we cognize, what are the limitations in cognitions, what is knowledge, etc. Axiological aspect determines the value dimension of semantic space and answers the questions: what is the value of something, what is the value, what are the values, what priority in values following each other, what is the meaning of life. So all these questions of ethics and aesthetics. Praxeological aspect determines the motives, goals, and way to achieve them in human activity, in practice, and answers questions: what to do, how to practice. And finally, structural logical aspect determines the basic structures and logic of the functioning of the semantic space and answers the questions: what structure lies at the base of the world, what rules govern the world, what are the rules of the development of the world, society, of the man. So this component in fact gives answers to questions of the logic of functioning of semantic space. All of the above aspects of the semantic space are closely interrelated and interdependent. You can see the arrows on this diagram that show this relation. Let's see now how these 5 aspects are represented in the traditional theory of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine. For the traditional semantic space of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine, the ontological aspect are the aspects of existence and represented with basic conceptions of worldview as the concept of Tao, the concept of void, the concept of Qi, the concept of Yin-Yang, the ternary models, the concept of earth, man, sky, the model of life, Zin, Qi, Shen, the concept of Yu, Xin, as well as the cross-conceptual concept of the creation of life from Tao. The graphical representation of the ontology of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine is presented on the slide in the form of a kind of semantic map, which we'll talk about later more in detail. And as we'll see later, it's a very convenient tool to understand visually the theory of image medicine and Zhong Yuan Qigong, when we have at the same time a picture and its meaning and the system of relation between them. The epistemological component of the semantic space of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine is determined by the concept of image, as well as by the system of basic methods of cognition and self-cognition, such as the methods of extrasensory feeling of Qi through the hand and the whole body of a person, the method of the third eye to perceive internal images, the method of the third ear to perceive internal sounds, and the method of the second heart for intuitive perception of direct knowledge, comprehension, and interpretation of the sensations we feel images, emotions, and feelings. Also, the second heart method is associated with the experience of emotions, feelings, not only with the semantic space. Now, the axiological component of the semantic space of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine is most vividly represented by the system of high values in human life that are reflected in the concepts of Tao and De, the concept of achieving the Yangshan level, and partly in the concept of second heart. Next, the praxeological component of the semantic space is always determined by the concepts of Tao and De, the concept of achieving Tao as the concept which is opposite to the genesis of life from Tao. So here in praxeology we have a reverse movement comparing with the primary movement that we call the genesis. Tao gave source to everything through the void, the yin-yang concept, through the model of Zin, Qi, Shen. But here we move in opposite directions through all the stages to the holistic, to the whole. In details, the praxeological concept of attaining the Tao is revealed by the system of exercises of the developmental block of Zhong Yuan Qigong. We also present this system of exercises as a kind of graphic structure that is shown in the picture. These are different types of exercises according to the level of practice, to each level of practice. Next is the structural logical component, which is not very well presented in an explicit form, but with the appearance of semantic maps, this gap will be eliminated. It's also very important in the future to develop the logic of imaginative perception and imaginative thinking applied in Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine, to describe the logic of the second heart from the point of view of modern formal logical systems. An example of such an analytical and graphical presentation of structural logical models is presented on the slide. These are particular models that have already been described scientifically, particularly in PhD theses presented in prestigious scientific magazines. So this is the way of how semantic spaces are presented in the theory of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine. All right, we have somehow clarified now the notion of semantic space, its types and aspects. Of course, to comprehend Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine, go deeper, go further in the semantic space, we definitely need to learn and practice these systems. First, we need to gain our personal experience that contains sensations, images, feelings, emotions, acts of will and acts of understanding, comprehension of what you experience during practice. And then, over time, our understanding will turn into more holistic, deeper, more complete understanding. However, no matter how well and for how long we practice, no matter how deeply we penetrate into the essence of the practice, there will always be questions that we can't answer. Here are the examples of such difficult questions that are very often asked today by even eminent Qigong masters and in particular by Professor Xu Mintang during their lectures and seminars. So these questions are the following. What is Qi or Qi? What is energy in Qigong? What is image? How does image and reality relate? Is the image something real or just some kind of phantom in the mind? What is image of an illness? What is the nature of the image and qi? Why does image in mind of an image medicine therapist recovers a patient's illness? Despite the fact that answers to these questions are fundamental for Qigong and image medicine and should be clearly disclosed, should be clearly described within the framework of the traditional theory of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine, unfortunately, there is no yet good convincing answers to these questions. Such state of traditional theory, of course, doesn't contribute to the output of these systems to a wider audience, to the official recognition of their methods, as well as the interest of the scientific world in the study of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine, in the creation of new technologies in these areas. What is the reason for the lack of good answers to such and similar questions, and how can we get a good, comprehensive answer to them? It seems to me that the main reason for the lack of a deep understanding of the essence of qi and image, and as a consequence of the entire Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine, is a certain potential limitation in the existing traditional semantic space of the Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine system themselves. In fact, the indicator of the limitations of any semantic space is the existence of questions to which there are no intelligible, no clear, no convincing answers within the framework of these semantic spaces. This limitation of traditional semantic space is due mainly to use in Zhong Yuan Qigong in image medicine of the internal methods of cognition and cognitive, creative human development technologies that are oriented on the subjective or phenomenal cognition of the world, personal cognition, which is typical for most of psychophysical development of system of human development, such as yoga, Qigong, all kinds of meditation systems, the main method of which is introspection, reflection, and self-awareness. Of course, interior methods of cognitions are very important for a person because they are most efficient in the comprehension of our inner world, the world of our mind and soul, in the understanding of individual freedom and the meaning of its existence. We can't do without these methods. However, using mainly internal methods of knowledge is a one-sided approach. As we can see from the history of science, this approach can't give meaningful answers to the deep questions of the physical external of the material world, in the cognition of which is successfully engaged modern science that uses mainly external methods of cognition aimed at the object cognition of the world. Examples of the object semantic spaces are intersubjective semantic spaces of modern science, such as physics, biology, and cognitive psychology and informatics, the theory of which is based on the method of learning from a third party, not from the first party, and the object of cognition is always something physical, something material, or its properties and structure. Besides, in the interior methods of comprehension and development in Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine, it's the irrational component that dominate, since they are based on sensory and volitional effect fields of consciousness, using mainly continuous or gestalt, intuitive, meditative cognition and creative thinking, and not rational discourse, not rigorous conceptual thinking that characterize modern science and Western culture. However, we must understand that this is not a drawback, but only a particular limitation. In fact, such criticism can be related to rational cognition in Western culture and science as well. It's known that any rational system of knowledge is not complete and always implies its own rational integral shadow part. An example of the limitation of rational knowledge is the theorem of Gödel on the incompleteness of formal systems, which is fundamental for mathematics and mathematical logic. Another example is the inability to construct integral philosophical rational system. As always in such systems arise contradictions, and there is always room for criticism. Rationality itself can't be explained rationally. In my opinion, only through the synthesis of the rational and the irrational can be reached holistic understanding. This understanding is a leap, an emergence that is absent in purely rational description. Such a bond between the rational, such a connection between the rational and the irrational can be conventionally shown in the form of a yin-yang symbol. There is one more diagram where this ideal scheme is presented, the scheme of development of individual and collective semantic spaces as synthesis of subjective and objective semantic spaces, synthesis of external and internal methods of cognition. Particularly interesting and promising, in my opinion, is the study of traditional theory and practice of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine in terms of semantic spaces of modern science, philosophy, medicine, and technology. This will give us the opportunity to substantially complement the traditional developments in the field of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine with new scientific ideas and hopefully modern technologies. I'll give a well-known example of the successful application of a scientific approach to the knowledge of traditional medicine. For example, lab studies of medicinal properties of willow bark. As you probably know, willow bark decoction was often used in folk medicine to treat headaches and various colds. Scientific studies of the properties of willow bark showed that the active ingredient here is acetyl salicylic acid, that we know as aspirin. In folk medicine, there was no such knowledge about this medicinal component of willow bark, and of course, scientific research made it possible to understand the essence of the therapeutic effect of a long-known decoction in a completely new and more adequate way. Moreover, such knowledge became the basis for the creation of more efficient medicinal preparations than a decoction of willow bark, since the efficiency of pure aspirin is much higher than that of a decoction. Following the analogy of this example, we can hope that the scientific research and comprehension of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine reveal more opportunities to develop Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine in the areas previously unexplored, but very urgent and promising for the future of mankind. In particular, the use of a scientific approach to understand such basic concepts of image medicine as energy and image. This will open up the opportunity for building a modern scientific theory of image medicine and developing the corresponding innovative technologies for treatment and human development. In this lecture cycle, I suggest using integrative research methodology, understanding that it could be the tool to enrich our comprehension of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine without putting in conflict representatives of different semantic spaces, but rather opening up the possibility for their mutual communication, enrichment, and development, perhaps even the creation of some synthetic knowledge, which is undoubtedly a sign of the development of global culture, science, and practice. Before to examine the essence of this integrative methodology of the study of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine, let's formulate the statements about the expediency of its use. The first statement: there was, and there still is, a whole multitude of different semantic spaces, like as walls, semantic screens, semantic tunnels, that has been developed by mankind on our planet during its whole history. They are very diverse. Second statement: each of these semantic spaces has as its strong as its weak sides, contains something unique that is absent in other semantic spaces, but also contains something illusory which can and should be corrected. And the third statement: rationally explained addition or a complement, and if possible the synthesis of several semantic spaces, might be the basis for generating a new, more adequate, more complete, holistic semantic space. Very simple statements, but they show how we can apply the integrative approach in research of any objects. Integrativity can be interpreted according to its two different levels. At the lowest level, as complementarity, and higher level, as a synthesis, integrity. Interpretation of integrity as a complementarity doesn't provide rational synthesis of different semantic spaces, but only affirms the importance and the need to hold in mind the knowledge from diverse, often contradictory semantic spaces. A good example of an integrative approach as a complementarity is the principle of complementarity in quantum mechanics of Nobel laureate Niels Bohr, that affirms that a more complete comprehension of the nature of objects of the quantum world is possible if to simultaneously interpret them in the framework of opposing concepts, like a wave and a particle corpuscle. The quantum mechanical objects are neither a wave nor a corpuscle, and more adequately can be described by connecting the two ideas of wave and of a corpuscle. It's very symbolic that in this principle Niels Bohr saw an analogy with the concept of yin-yang. His family coat of arms contained the yin-yang symbol as a central element, as well as the phrase contraria san complementa, which can be translated as opposites complement each other. The second level, that is more deep, more meaningful, lies in the interpretation of integrity as a full synthesis of knowledge about the object of study from different semantic spaces for the formation of new knowledge and comprehension, what we'll call the integral knowledge or the holistic comprehension or understanding. A holistic understanding presupposes a full-fledged rational synthesis of polar, of opposite principles and ideas. The second level of interpretation of integrativity can be interpreted as evolution, development of the first level of its interpretation. To form a more visual representation of the integrativity of semantic spaces, we'll give such an example. From school, everyone knows the Cartesian coordinate system that allows us to describe any possible kinds of geometric objects on a plane two-dimensional coordinate system or in volume three-dimensional coordinate system. a certain geometric volumetric figure can be identified with a cognizable object, and three projections of this figure on a plane can be identified with knowledges about this object within the framework of three different semantic spaces. This example, on the one hand, scientifically shows the limitations of our knowledge about the object of the research, because the projection is not identical or similar to the three-dimensional shape, but on the other hand demonstrates the possibility of a more adequate comprehension of the cognizable object if to apply procedures of complementing and synthesis of knowledges from different semantic spaces. Here is the graphic illustration. In this geometric example, the complementarity of semantic spaces is represented by the totality of all three flat projections of a volumetric figure. So the totality of all projections as different knowledges from different semantic spaces about an object, is a complementarity, and the synthesis of semantic spaces is the volumetric figure itself. Despite the fact that we can reconstruct this figure by its flat projections, this possibility only exists thanks to an intuitive understanding of how this can be done. Because the projections of a three-dimensional figure themselves are object of a plane and not three-dimensional space that is qualitatively different from a plane. Therefore, complementation of semantic spaces does not generate a new integral semantic space, and such generation can only be given via their synthesis. Complementation generates only a more voluminous, more versatile, but not a holistic semantic space. Complementation is the first necessary step towards synthesis. Conventionally, the image of construction of a new integrative semantic space from plurality of known semantic space via rationally explained selection from qualitative knowledges and methods is represented on the slide. The upper part, where the yin-yang is not a complete symbol, is an integrative semantic space that is formed regarding the principle of complementarity, and the lower part, where the yin-yang symbol is complete, has the synthesis and holistic understanding is present here. Such integrative approach in the conditions of global crisis will help without doubt to form a new man, harmoniously combining subjective and objective fields or spaces, internal and external technologies of cognition and development, as well as rational and irrational cognition that are represented in Oriental and Western, in ancient and in modern traditions. Of course, the above integrative research methodology has long been successfully used in modern science, in philosophy, in medicine, and in technology, for which there are many examples. Here are just a few of them. In philosophy, generally, integrative methodology of cognition is an integral part of philosophy itself and of its holistic methodology. This is especially can be seen in classical philosophical systems, for example, Plato, the Neoplatonists, Aristotle, Thomas Aquinas, Hegel. Also, the predominance of integrative methodology in the cognition of the universe and man is distinguishing for the Russian philosophy of all unity, the outstanding representatives of which are the Vladimir Solovyov, Sergey Bulgakov, Nikolai Beredyaev, the Trubetsky brothers, Alexei Losev. Today, integrative methodology is actively developing in the works of the philosopher Professor Moiseev in the project Neo-All Unity. Also, The well-known examples of integrative trends that bring East and West together are the Dalai Lama's regular meetings for over the past 30 years with world-renowned scientists in the field of quantum physics, neurophysiology, theories of consciousness, the publication of the Frithjof Capra series of world bestsellers on the parallels of the East and West culture, science and medicine, as well as the formation of a new, more holistic image of science. We can cite also examples such as the books The Tao of Physics, Lessons of Wisdom, Web of Life. Also are well known the Ken Wilber's Integrative Research Project and the creation of the Institute for Integrative Research in the United States, the Science and Non-Duality Project led by Deepak Chopra, that brings the scientific and Vedic worldviews together. In the field of science, examples of such integrative trends are the creation of quantum theory, system theory, informatics, synergetics. Also, such examples are the formation of the concept of interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary researches in the works of Nobel laureate Jean Piaget. So how we will hold our cycle of lectures and discussions? I will read the lectures, and for discussions, the well-known scientists, philosophers and culturologists will be invited. They will be from different branches of knowledge. We will need to look through and comprehend as fully as possible all the traditional semantic spaces of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine, bringing out the most important issues and contradictions in them, examining possible ways to answer these questions and the means of solutions of these contradictions, using an integrative research methodology. To pursue the goals of our cycle, we'll consider the semantic spaces of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine as a map that displays a variety of terms, concepts, and connections, relations between these concepts. Moreover, we will consider each part of this map from the point of view of different scientific and philosophical disciplines, which is conventionally illustrated on this slide. Among such scientific domains, such scientific areas will be present physics, biology, psychology, medicine, computer science, artificial intelligence, as well as interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary approaches. It's also important to notice that the content of our lectures will not always be purely scientific, since many matters do not lie in the circle of the modern scientific approach. Therefore, besides the well-proven scientific theories, we'll additionally use ideas that lie outside the boundaries of modern science. We conventionally call this approach the trans-scientific approach, and the corresponding research the trans-scientific research. Hypotheses and knowledges considered within the framework of such a trans-scientific approach are not yet accepted, but they have good reason to become part of the future science. Also, given that our integrative studies include complementation, possible synthesis of semantic spaces of the East and the West, it's natural to talk about the use of a transcultural approach and transcultural research, which is shown here in the pyramid integrative research methodology, where there are research within scientific framework and the gray zone that might become a part of science in future. Given that knowledge of any domain can be general, or private can be abstract, or particular can be fundamental, or applied, narrow-oriented. It's necessary to realize that a semantic map of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine should display the knowledge in different dimension with different detailing and volume, with the possibility to travel, to move around the map to different places with different dimension. With such a visual examination of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine, we can clearly notice an integral worldview picture that lies at the base of the traditional understanding of these systems, combining efficiently images, pictures, and semantic images. Also, this approach is convenient and targeted also for educational purposes. It allows us to select some sub-areas of the semantic map, which will be consistently examined using the integrative methodology in our cycle of lectures and discussions. So, after going through the entire cycle of lectures, we'll cover the entire semantic space of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine, but of course with different levels of detailing, and we will be able in our mind to form a more holistic understanding of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine that complements our personal experience and knowledge of these systems with new knowledge, new meanings in terms of philosophy, science, medicine, and technology. In our cycle of lectures and discussions, we'll raise a lot of interesting questions, this systematic disclosure of which will allow a much better understanding of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine. I will now name only a few lectures and related with them matters, subjects that we'll consider in the near future. We need to give an answer to the question, what is image in image medicine? The problem of semantic fuzziness and breadth of the concept of image in image medicine. We'll talk about classification of image types, ontological and epistemological aspects of the image in image medicine. We'll discuss if the information obtained with the help of the so-called third eye and second heart objective, or is it only the work of our subconsciousness and the peculiarities of interpretation of people who believe in the veracity of such phenomena? What are the possible ways of theoretical and experimental of the objectivity of this information? Also, we'll consider different fields of image study, image perception, and creative thinking in Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine. We'll talk about how the image in mind of the image therapist affect the physiological process in the patient's body and his psyche. What scientific arguments and hypotheses can explain such important phenomenon in image medicine? We'll have a look on the fundamental conceptual models of Tao, models of word, and the Qis. Yin-Yang conception and the ternary models that are known as Zin Qi Shen and Earthman Sky models. A very interesting subject that I call Qi's many faces and its essence: cultural, philosophical, psychological, biological, physical, and informational aspects. We'll talk about the essence of Shen, the relation between image and Shen, philosophical and scientific theories of consciousness. We'll discuss the problem of the existence of the soul. Does the soul exist as a substance independent of the body? Is the experience of leaving the body, going out of the body, a reliable final proof of the existence of the soul independent of the body, or is it just another well-organized illusion, only a phantom? What are the strong rational arguments that correspond to the hypothesis of the existence of the soul independent from the body? With these general matters, we'll also discuss more particular questions as problems of research of diagnostic and therapeutic possibilities of image medicine. We'll also talk about complementary methods in image medicine. Of course, these questions is not the whole list of questions we are going to raise in these lectures and discussions cycle. I hope that our cycle of lectures and discussions will help to achieve a number of important goals, like to familiarize wide audience of practitioners, of instructors of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine with the achievements of modern science, philosophy, medicine, and technology that can be useful for improving qualification, for deepening and expanding understanding of the theory and practice of these systems, and contribute to personal development. Second, expanding the audience and practitioners of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine by forming a new modern semantic space and a positive image of these wonderful systems of development, rehabilitation, and treatment. Third, its involvement of scientists from various scientific fields, as well as working possible direction for comprehensive study of Zhong Yuan Qigong and Chinese image medicine, creating new technologies and innovations in the field of wellness and holistic human development. The fourth, assistance in the development of fundamentally new, high-quality educational programs in the field of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine that would meet the requirements of modern national and international educational standards. And the fifth, creation of necessary conditions and base for the official recognition of Zhong Yuan Qigong and image medicine as ancient health and medical folk practices within the framework of a future scientific integrative medicine. To finish today's introductory lecture, I'd like to ask you, dear listeners, to please write me on my email that you can see on the slide with suggestions on the form and the principles of our future lecture cycle. And also please ask questions. I'll try to answer the most important of them in future lectures. We are going to finish now. Thank you everyone for participating in our seminar. Thank you to organizers for their work. See you next time.